Dzień dobry, dzieci. This is the Flurza experience, a show about Gwent, but so much more. I'm joined by the Prince of Pies, Pavel Burza. That's a new one right there. How do you
I
feel?
love me a good pie. Love me a good pie, preferably cherry pie. Man, that's my thing.
There's
I mean,
there's so much hype around cherry as a flavor, and
I
I
love it.
just never got onto it. Like cherry, like cherry flavored like candy, not a fan. Cherry flavored
No,
medicine,
candy, no.
not a fan.
No, same.
Cherries in pie, like there's if
Ah,
anything else really, like apple, I'll take apple. I'll take peach.
I love apple too. Peach
Yeah,
is also good, like a peach cobbler.
but I'm not a pie fan in general. I'm just to me like I'd rather a cake than a pie. Like
Same.
like fruit, it's like I get it, it's fruit.
I
Like
love pies if they're well made, but yeah, cake is above pie always, always,
no, cake is
always.
important. We need to respect the cake.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go, Prince of Pies. That's you.
Beautiful. I'll take it. I'll take anything that's, sweets related. I'm in. I'm in. So yeah, this is episode 13. Hello Flake and hello everybody watching. And yeah, what's for number 13? You gotta give me something. You
I
always come up with something cool.
I gotta give you a sports reference because I love sports and it's a really good time in sports right now because baseball's in full swing. We're approaching the hockey playoffs, the NHL playoffs. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. This is a really clutch time for me because I'm just loving it. Golf is back on TV and going crazy, and Tiger Woods is playing. So I'm in heaven here. So the significance of number 13. I was going to give you a Montreal Canadiens reference, but there's no retired number 13, and the last player who wore number 13 that I can remember is someone by the name of Michael Camilleri, who played for the team like 10 years ago. Goal scorer, didn't really do a whole lot, but anyways, I think he's played for Calgary, then God knows what he's doing now. But number 13, in terms of significance that I could remember, that I could think about, it was worn by Alex Rodriguez when he went to the New York Yankees. And why is it significant? Well, Alex Rodriguez, when he played for Seattle and when he played for Texas, used to wear number 3. And he was like the top tits of baseball at the time. And typically, when you're like the number 1 player in baseball, whatever number you have, wherever team you go to, you will always have that number. However, when he went to the Yankees, number 3 was Babe Ruth's old number, and it was retired. So he had to wear a different number, so he chose number 13. And that's why
Wow.
I thought it was pretty significant because I remember when it occurred, which was like in the mid 2000s. They were releasing. It happened, I think, after a particular baseball video game came out, and the baseball game, the trade happened after the game came out, so they had to like push an update where they did this cool cinematic where you see like A-Rod's jersey, the back of him, and his number goes from 3 to 13, and I was like, okay, that's
Ooh,
kind of cool. It was
that's
it
cool.
was that much of a big deal, frankly. It was ridiculous how, I mean, you know, like, because you're Borja 46, right? Like, there's a
Yeah.
significance to it. You understand the significance to the number
Of
associated
the
to your
number.
name, and I think it was a bigger story of him going from shortstop to third base, which was a pretty significant move, but him going from 3 to 13, people were like, oh my god, like, he's going to have to change numbers. I'm like, really? Is that, like, I guess superstition is a big deal.
Yeah, there is superstition around the number 13. I think a lot of people consider 13 to be the most unluckiest number. Find that you mentioned it in cycling. If you like sign up for the tour and you get a number that you pin on the back of your like jersey, the person with the number 13 always flips it around and has it flipped around. It's never like 1-3, it's the other way around. So apparently they do it because they feel if you flip it, that means you won't crash and it will be a lucky number. So they just, have it upside down.
That's actually quite cool. Again, superstition in sports is
Yeah.
it's so prominent. Um, do you have any superstitions when it comes to like your cycling or your running?
I really don't. I'm not a superstitious person. I only have this thing that on one of my like routes when I run, there is like this electrical pole thing, but it's not like one pole, it's just like two of them. And I never run like under because they kind of like, they they meet here, and I never run like under them. I always run around them,
Okay.
never under the thing, because I feel like it's bad luck in some way. But I was never superstitious. I like the black cat on the road. Never really. I never did the like, because in Poland you have to like walk like 2 steps back and you have to spit over your left arm or something like that in order for there nothing bad to happen. Like I never believed these things, to be honest.
The most superstitious people I ever knew were like all my Polish family. I feel like they're
Yeah,
always
I'm not
super.
surprised.
Yeah, that
My
just
grandma was like, "Oh, you gotta watch out for the black cats, or you should first do left leg or right." But I feel like it's, some of these things might be superstitious, but some of these things might be kind of things that you do because it's like a ritual. I know people who, like, when they go running, like they first put on their left shoe, then the right shoe, or the right shoe first, and then their left shoe. But we also have these, these superstitions, like when you get out of bed, you should never get off the bed with your left foot, always with your right foot, because if you get off of your left foot, you will have bad attitude during the day. You'll be unhappy and stuff like that. When it's like, these are all like, we even have this saying in Polish, like, "Oh, he got up on the left side of the foot," kind of, or the leg, which is like,
do you hear
what?
that? That's the fire alarm testing that is happening right now.
Yeah, I
But
can't hear it yet.
you can't hear
Worst
it.
case scenario, just run out of the building, like,
Oh
just
yeah.
take your comics. They're
Oh,
worth a lot.
that's the problem. Like, is what do I save? You know, and I always thought about this. I'm like, okay, if I have like one armful of stuff I can bring, what would it be? And I honestly don't know. Like, is it my cards, like my Star Wars cards? Is it my comic book? Like, from a value
Comic
perspective,
books.
the comic books would
What's
be
worth more?
nothing in my apartment. Nothing. Like, it's insane how like the majority of my net worth is just in a long box in a closet. Like that's where all of my youthful money went to, is there. But yeah, if you do hear all this stuff, if you do, don't be alarmed. I'm okay. It's just a monthly fire check that happens on Wednesdays apparently. But like, we've been recording this on Wednesdays forever, and it's
Never happened.
it never happened. I guess this is all right. Well, they knew. They just wanted to get on the Flurza podcast.
Yeah.
All right.
They want the merch, and they want to be the sponsors. Like, if they want to be the sponsors, like they gotta show up for us.
All right. So what's on the subject matter this week?
So this week we're going to talk about netdecking and the perceived toxicity in card games.
Yes.
Toxicity.
Now,
There was a song. Toxicity.
well,
Oh, a system of a down. Thank you.
the toxicity of the there's that. Plus, there's also Britney Spears toxic. So we don't have the rights to these songs, so I don't think that Alias V, who's editing this, is going to throw that in there.
But we sang them pretty well, so
yeah,
done.
Exactly. It's pretty much the
Shout
same.
out to Alias. Thank you for watching us two idiots talk about card games. Hi.
I know it's great because like we do like I will say hello to you, Alias, and thank you for doing this. But you're right, and sometimes she'll give me feedback and she'll be like, "Great episode, this was fun," and like she watches and listens to everything that like we record.
Feel bad for her,
like through and through,
because she's like forced to watch, right?
Well, forced. Like I guess I suppose like she's one of 983's editors, so she does, but I try to give her the best experience while doing this. So
nice.
Yeah, but before we get there, we got the Dagon rumor report.
Yes, the famous Dagon rumor report. Dagon has been spotted in 2017, where he existed long ago, and that is where he will stay, because for the 957th time, Dagon is not happening. 0% chance. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But if you want to become a Dagon rumor reporter, this is important because you want to become one. You can get the official 100%, mint awesome Flurza gear at 983shop.com. And if you use the code Flurza5, you will get $5 off your order. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. cop that merch, get that stuff because it's amazing, amazing quality, and yeah, you can become a Dagon rumor reporter. You can take my job and Flake's job and start a podcast and talk about Dagon. And yeah, we would love to be your first guest, by the way.
We'll absolutely be there as your inaugural guests. We come as a duo, by the way. We are Flurza.
Yes.
There's no Flake, there's no Burza. It's just Flurza. That's how we go.
Can't have one, you have to take both.
Exactly.
Sorry.
But and if you do get the gear, if you do become a Dagon rumor reporter, you have official authority to go onto Reddit and immediately shut down anyone who asks when Dagon's coming. Because that is is the job that I currently have undertook. If you've noticed, like anytime, every week on like the Monday or Tuesday when you post the send us your questions, my favorite thing is to go there and just ruin people's dreams immediately. So is it coming? No, nope. It's not. And then if it comes back again, my go-to is just say June 1st. June 1st.
Yeah, it's gonna be there. That question is gonna be there every week. Same as premium tokens. We even did Twig last week with Vlad where he said like he doesn't know when he's happening and if he's gonna happen. And people still keep on asking the question. I'm like, the game director came forth and said, I don't know. So why you still ask that question? Same about premium tokens. He gave kind of, but there was less premium token questions I think this time than we normally get, because he actually addressed that with more kind of behind the scenes insight into the process when it comes to premiumification, and that the cards from the expansions or the drops that we're doing this year, they have priority over tokens. Some tokens are done, some are not. So we'll see when they come. Easy.
All right, let's get to the Wayback Machine as we take a little trip down memory lane here, and we're gonna go this one. This is a two-parter, which actually fits quite nicely how this time. But this week in 2019 was the introduction of the Gwent Partner Program.
Yay!
Now we had an episode about the faction ambassadors, but we did have questions regarding the partner program. And last week we talked about vetting partners and etc. But in this case, the Gwent Partner Program, in my opinion, is leaves a lot to be desired. That's just me. However, I mean, at the time, I think it was a pretty sweet thing, but I think maybe it just kind of lost a lot of steam.
It's one thing that we wanted to kind of reiterate and kind of work a little bit, maybe add a couple tiers to it. It was a plan that we had last year, but then we decided to stop because as a company, meaning CDPR, we're thinking about maybe doing something more as like a wider content creator program, which Gwent could also fit into. So we're exploring these possibilities. So there is some thoughts like happening behind the scenes within the studio, like what we want to do in the future, but nothing concrete for me to like come out and say like, okay, this is going to happen for sure. But we want to do more for sure, because we also feel like the program, once it started, it was good and it had some thing. Then we had the ambassadors, which really didn't work in the end. And after that, we kind of decided that we would like to do a little bit more for the partners and maybe introduce like a tier system and, some things on top of than just, getting the badge and being added to the partner list and being, eligible for reveals and stuff like that. But maybe, a couple more tiers up in terms of like the things and the benefits that you could get from this program. So yeah, that was the plan, but we want to now kind of see how this fits within the whole CDPR group and what we can do with the program moving forward. But there are some plans, there are some ideas. Once these things kind of get ironed out, I think you might expect something from us this year, hopefully.
2020 was the Gwent Partners Open, and I participated in this, if I'm not mistaken. And I thought that this was an invitational tournament that was meant to showcase creativity and this and that and whatever. So I made a bunch of fascinating, interesting, non-meta decks to just showcase the game and some of the archetypes and whatever. And I went up against just constant meta decks. I got smoked. I got crushed. And I mentioned like there was a thread about the tournament, and I just mentioned, I'm like, yeah, I think I did this wrong. I thought it was going to be more of a tournament regarding like it's like content creators and whatever. So I wanted to
Mhm.
be creative, and I got smashed. And then I got flamed on Reddit, as I normally do, because I was supposed to take it seriously, and they're like, "You play to win. That's what the tournament is for. It's a tournament. You're supposed to play to win. You always bring your best decks." And this leads nicely to our topic, which is going to be net decking. But
Oh.
I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, they're like, "Well, you're stupid if you bring anything but the best deck to a tournament." I'm like, there's nothing at stake. I'm like, I get it. I'm like, all right, fine. Like, I just misunderstood. Like, I guess I was wrong. It's all good. And then from that day forward, I never entered another tournament ever again.
Aw.
Ever again.
It
That's
ruined your
not true.
tournament experience.
Well,
Well,
no,
apart from the Flesh and Blood stuff, right?
well, the Flesh and Blood stuff, yeah, no, I mean it from like a Gwent tournament.
Gwen.
I've
Yeah.
refused to play or I've declined rather to play in any other Gwent tournament. The only one I did was I filled a slot for a Gwentfinity tournament, and
Mhm.
I won my first round, and then I conceded, and then I dropped. I was like, I don't want to do this again. Like, I played with the intention of losing, not the intention of losing, but I played in the Skellige Gwentfinity War. I played in round 1. I brought
Mhm.
my 4.
Lippy.
I didn't play Lippy. Hell no. That's the one I played against Lippy, and I beat the crap out of that garbage deck. But I won that tournament. Or I won that round, and I wasn't expecting to. So I moved on to like the semifinals, and I conceded. I said I don't want to play. Like, I don't. I did this as to fill a void, and I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting to win, but I did. So I conceded, I think, to celebrate. I told him I didn't have time on my schedule, unfortunately, and I said that he would probably beat me anyways, which he probably would have, and that was it. So that was my tournament experience. But this Gwent Partners Open was quite well. That was the basically me saying, "All right, this is a showcase tournament, an exhibition tournament, and I'm getting flamed for being creative." I'm like, "All right,
Yeah,
we're
dude,
good."
no, you can't be creative. No, this is a card game. You got to bring the top tier decks and battle out with the best of them. Anything that, has like a lower score than being a 5 out of 5 is not even, it's not supposed to be there. Like, what do you think? Although, um, to be quite honest, it's also a thing that we want to bring back also this year. Like, I think I mentioned it somewhere that it's one of those tournaments that kind of we wanted to do, but then the war in Ukraine kind of happened, and then we kind of decided to postpone it. So it's on postponement right now, but it's one of those things that we want to do for sure. Because I think we had 2 or 3 editions already of it, and it was quite fun. It's really cool to see actually the partners go head to head. But I agree. Like, based off of our experience working on tournaments, I think we always appreciate crazy lineups, even as from like professional players. Then if they bring something that is a surprise to us in terms of their lineup, it's always more interesting, and we kind of like, oh my god, have you seen this? Did you see what he brought and stuff like that? I think it actually shows a player's creativity a little bit more, and also even if you have like, I think this will segue to our main topic of net decking and the toxic decks and stuff like that. Even if you have a meta deck which has some inclusions of cards that you would not expect in this deck, that I think it kind of showcases that player's personality, or it showcases like what they are targeting in their opponent's lineup. So it's like a hard target for something. Like, for example, I'll take dwarves into as an example because that's the thing I'm playing the most right now. And like your dwarf deck with surrender, for example, I have a dwarf deck with Gerald Irden to get to if you're playing against the same thing, to get rid of the boosts on the whole row and stuff like that. So I feel like you will be teching with some cards against a matchup that you can foresee that you're going to go against. But it's always good to see some creativity when it comes to deck building and players actually bringing something that you're like, oh my god, this is crazy, and then actually see it work in the competitive field. I think it makes it even better.
Well, this is where we get to that point, right? Of like
Mhm.
net decking and toxicity and whatnot, and like there's a little bit of a link between them. But we just talked about the fact that creativity is nice to see, but there's this stigma about net decking, and this is I think we spoke about this. I talked to this about this with Shinmiri when we had our show way back
Mhm.
when. But Netdecking, the thing about netdecking is that like you'll see this every single time on every single card game. I am like, I don't know, subscribed, joined or whatever, like to various different Reddit threads, Reddit subreddits, like Hearthstone,
Mhm.
Gwent, Magic, Runeterra, Flesh and Blood, blah 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 blah. Netdecking seems to be like the worst thing in the world. And what I'm gonna find quite interesting is that the only place that I have never seen a single complaint about netdecking is Flesh and Blood.
Oh wow.
Not a single peep about it. And I think it has to do with the fact that there's no digital client. So the exhaustion of playing against the same deck over and over and over again isn't as real because players, their only outlet to play the game is at whatever events that are happening locally or with their friends casually or whatnot. But when you're playing with something at stake, be it your rank, like on ladder, or at a tournament where your wins and losses factor into your prize and your payout, um, I've never seen anyone complain about netdecking because everyone understands that no, this is the best deck and this is how it goes. And with sideboarding, clearly there's going to be tech, there's going to be options, there's going to be this, there's going to be that. Meta is incredibly important in how to evaluate it in order of being successful. But netdecking has been a complaint amidst the community of every other card game that I've ever played forever. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, or the first thing I want to tackle, is that if you're complaining about netdecking in Gwent, it is not something that is unique to Gwent. Every other card game, you can go to any of the other subreddits, and within the past 24 hours, I will guarantee you there's at least one post of somebody complaining about netdecking and that. But what is netdecking? I mean, netdecking is basically people who want to take a shortcut to find the best deck possible or what is functional amidst what they're comfortable playing so that they can have the best possible experience with their time, which could be limited. So is that really that bad of a thing? Like, put it this way. If you're going to a theme park, okay, if you're going to Disney World, you got a day at Disney World, it's crowded. You know that you're only going to be able to maybe do 4 rides out of the 20 that are there. Are you going to waste your time trying all the different ones waiting in line, or are you going to ask what around and say, what's the best ride possible? If I'm only going to go on 4 rides, which ones are they going to be? Because if I'm going to be waiting in line and if my time is limited, what am I going to jump on? Am I going to go and sit on the wait for the teacups for 3 hours, or am I going to go ride, Space Mountain, So that's kind of the the initial barrage about the unfair criticism of netdeckers and netdecking, because it's literally just it. Put it this way, like when you go to a restaurant and you ask what's the best thing on the menu, you're netdecking the menu. You're just saying that's what you're doing. You're like, oh, what's the best thing here? All right, I'll get that. Rather than trying everything. It's a similar thing. It's just it's the mentality that you want the best for your time and your investment in that thing.
Yeah, I mean, I never understood I kind of get the players that NetDeck gets stigmatized like instantly. And I feel it's because everybody expects others to come up with fun and creative decks on their own, but A, if you're limited on time, you won't. B, if you're getting into a format or into a card game and you don't know anything about the meta, you will study what others have done. And you will, I think, like, you will, whoever you are, you will sooner or later net deck to some extent, especially when you're getting into a game. Like, you will start with something that is like the bare bones of a deck, and then you will try to build around it, but somebody has already come up with the structure of the deck, right? But you will kind of go in, you will fine tune, and you will change it based off of your own kind of feel or the matchups that you go again, or based on how well you start to know the meta. You will be introducing changes, or maybe you will moving on to a different deck because it counters whatever is the best thing in the current meta that you're playing. So you'll be playing around with these things, but I feel like you cannot be you cannot be witch hunting these people and going to them like, oh, you should not be net decking. Is like, this is not the way to go, because we should all be deck brewers and deck creators. While I think all of us don't have the time, some of us like taking the shortcut. And I think as like a overall society right now, we're kind of used to getting things on demand, right? Like we watch movies on demand, TV shows on demand. We like getting food straight at our doorstep and stuff like that. We want to maybe take away some of the heavy lifting out of it. And we go the easy route. And I don't know why this is also considered the easy route, because for me, like if I'm juggling a couple card games, which are of my interest and stuff like that, I will go back and see like, okay, I haven't played MTG for some time because I'm focusing on Gwent right now. I go back to MTG. I want to see what's happening in the meta. So I go on MTG Goldfish and I see like, you have stats, what's the percentage of a deck in a given meta based off of the recent tournaments that were done on the MTG Online. So let's say I play Zorius Control, which is a deck that I love. It's 4% of the meta right now, 100 decks and different possibilities. And then you can go into the decks and see like who's playing what in that deck. There are a couple variations, some people have, I don't know, 3 copies of this card, but some choose 1 copy of this card. And you're like, okay, what's the thought process? What are they targeting? Which matchups they're going against? And then you look at, okay, Murktide Regent is the top of the meta. It's 11%, 272 decks. Okay, so this is a deck that has this and this and this. This is what I should counter. So when I'm building mine, maybe I should change it a little bit. And then you also need to take into consideration, like you go to your local game store and you go to like Friday Night Magic or whatever, or like any modern tournament, and then you see also what the meta is there. So then you're going back to this deck and you're teching against the stuff that you have there. But the bare bones, you kind of net deck because it is much easier to do it instead of like, I'm going to come up with something new and crazy. And maybe this will be kind of, my saving grace. But I think no one really has all that time, and they will always be kind of incentivized, like kind of like you mentioned, the partners open, like people will bring the strongest decks because they want the strongest stuff. And where do they get the strongest stuff? Well, they net deck it most likely, especially that, we have teams that specialize in this, right? Like TLG, like all, Team R2s and all the other ones, they have their own monthly reports where they say, okay, the meta this month is this. This is the performance of this deck. This is like a 5 out of 5. This is a 4.25 and stuff like that. And they consult it with pro players and stuff like that. And, a lot of people, like, they make their living out of this. Like, you go to Channel Fireball, you see all these card games that are under their belt. And you have all these pro players saying, like, this deck is good. This is what you should be having in it. And they're kind of like asking you to net deck it to some extent. And I think as a normal player that wants to have fun, you will net deck, but then you will start adjusting and working on the deck and changing it to your likeness. And from that, you kind of move forward.
Well, I've been very vocal about the fact that the player base, the community of most card games are 5% innovators and 95% those beneficiaries of those innovators. Not everyone can be the engineer, as it were. Like there are more pilots than there are people designing the planes. Like that's just the way of the way it goes. And not every pilot is going to know how to repair all the planes. He just knows how to fly them and operate them. That's what I am. I'm a pilot. Like I cannot design of the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours that I've played of Gwent. I have gotten to pro rank with homebrews a handful of times. Maybe 2 or 3 times with stuff that I've legitimately done on my own that nobody else was playing and nobody else gave an F about. But I did it on my own. Was it a rewarding experience? Sure, but I could have easily have invested that time with meta decks and got there faster and gotten better scores. Now, the thing about it is that I have the time, or when I was streaming daily, I had all kinds of time to do that. I had time to go sit down and trial and error and trial and error and trial and error and make it happen. But think about everybody else who's like, I only play 4 games of Gwent a day because I'm only afforded less than an hour a day because of I have a job, I have a family, I have responsibilities, I have all kinds of stuff. What makes, like, for all those who dunk on Netdeckers as being awful people, first of all, with the hundreds of thousands of people playing any given game, there are not 100,000 of unique decks, so there's going to be people who are going to be playing the right stuff. Not to mention, eventually, through standard evolution, people will just eventually hone their decks to whatever is best. So whether it's a net deck or not, or similar to a net deck, eventually people are going to realize that there are just certain cards that fit together better than other cards do, given the certain climate of whatever the meta is. Does that make them worse or worse people? No, it actually makes them quite smart, that they're efficiently using their time and trusting those who are the innovators, who are the engineers, that plane that they designed is the fastest, the best, the most sturdy, the most efficient, and that's what they've chosen to fly to get to where their destination is. And their destination is winning efficiently to accumulate more in-game resources, to progress their career, to advance their rank, etc. How is that a bad thing? Netdecking is the reason you, particularly whoever's listening, if you hate netdeckers, the reason you hate netdeckers is because you just are tired of playing against the same decks. And maybe those, but here's the deal. If those netdeckers are out there playing decks that you are beating regularly, you wouldn't complain because you're getting a bunch of free wins. So are you mad that the people are netdecking, or are you mad that you can't beat these net decks? That's basically it.
Because you can't make a good deck.
Well, that's it. And this is what I tell people. I'm like, if you're so pissed off about the fact that it's the same, it's the same 3 or 4 decks that are out there. First of all, if the top of the ladder, if the top of pro rank, or if you're in pro rank and you're seeing this, it's the same 4 or 5 lists. That's pretty good for the top 1% of the players. If they're playing 5 different decks viably, that's pretty good, because most other card games will have maybe 3. They'll have 3 at the top of the peak. But if you're coming up against the same lists over and over and over again, and you are too stubborn or not capable of switching up your deck to counter it, that's on you. That's not on the netdeckers, because the netdeckers are trusting the fact that everyone else out there does not have the capacity to build a deck to counter theirs. So maybe if you're upset about it, maybe it's time to just think, like, for instance, you talked about me putting in Surrender in my list. Mm-hmm. I'm like, if everybody's row stacking as dwarves, and dwarves have a lot of armor, this makes incredible sense to run Surrender. Yep. And I did play with Irden, but at the same time, Irden for me, I just couldn't fit it with provisions, so I eventually cut it. But Irden was a good choice, and that worked well. It was fun. But the choice of Surrender is, like you say, you play Zoltan's Company, they jam like 5 dwarves on the board trying to get a quick turn. You just surrender them down. Easy. Snap. Goodbye. And people are like, why are you running it? Like, just run Lacerate. I'm like, well, armor is important. For 1 more extra provision, I'm scooping all the armor off of them. And a lot of them deal with armor. Like, this is incredibly important. Anyway, so to me, I think it just comes down to the fact that there are 5% of people out there who are innovators, who are trying new things. People like Spessy, people like Shinmiri, people like, who actually go out there and hit the blueprint, go to the drawing board and create these blueprints of decks that people then gravitate towards. And the reason they gravitate towards it is because they don't have the same amount of time, or they don't have the skill. I have the time. I don't have the skill set to create decks. I'm completely comfortable saying that. I rely on smarter people than me to design the decks, and I trust in my ability to play the deck properly and well. I think I'm an excellent card player, but I'm definitely not an excellent theory crafter. But for those out there who are both, like Shinmiri, like Spessy, people are definitely going to gravitate towards them because they're out there trying new things. And I've even heard it, people, crapping on people like Spessy and be like, oh, he made another deck that everyone's going to play. Well, what do you want him to do? He's actually actively creating new decks, and you guys are copying him. So you are also part of the problem in that regard. But you know what? You know how you counter netdeckers? You build the deck that beats the net deck. That's why whenever Spessy comes out with a mill list that everyone jumps on, I'm like, happy day, baby, because these are easy wins. You just take the deck that goes in, you play something like dwarves, and you just crap all over Mill because Mill
Yeah,
is still bad.
easy. Yeah, actually, his mill version is pretty good. Now that you mention it, like with Golden Necker, I think it's a good addition. The deck is much better. I think I played against it on the ladder a couple times this week, and it's. But yeah, I mean, it is mill. Like it self pilots itself, and it's not good.
Well,
And
I understand that people hate Mill because of what it does. But Mill is a deck type that exists in many card games. And
yeah,
again, anytime that you just aren't allowed to play your cards or it's a disruptive kind of game, like yeah, it's annoying. It's tough and it's a bad experience to that regard. But you know what? You know what's even worse than playing against Mill and Gwent? Try playing against, what did you say? Azorius Control? Yeah, like go try
yeah,
to play like where none of your cards ever see the board because it's just
they don't
counterspell,
stick.
board wipe, counterspell. Yeah,
Yes.
no, thank
Yes,
you.
counter everything and yeah, get rid of everything that your opponent is
Wrath of
trying to do.
God, cleansing Nova. What else? What else?
Right now it's Supreme Verdict, more that way, but there's a lot of nice like targeted removal, so you don't really need a lot of board wipes. But there's like prismatic endings where you just exile non-land permanents. Same with like
Fumigate.
yeah, like new edition, March of Otherworldly Light. So that's also something that you do. So you
You
you pretty
sicken me.
much you play like Chalice of the Void. So yeah, with X counters. So a player can't play spells with a converted mana cost of X. So if you do one, then if you're playing against Burn, they can't do anything. So
As
yeah, it's just counter magic, but it's still not one of the worst decks. I think there are worser decks, but we'll get to that topic next since we already kind of started talking
yeah,
about Mill. And I just wanted to add to the net decking deck building thing. I fully agree with you that there are only a select few, especially in Gwent, which are able to create decks from scratch, especially when a new meta is shaping or new cards come out. But I feel like they know the game so well in and out that they're able to do it. That's one thing. And the other thing is that they are incredible like theory crafters, which I think the majority of us are just simply not. Like you said, we know how to pilot a deck more or less, or we learn how to pilot a deck, but we do not know if the card would be like performing well within let's say a shell of a deck that we used previously. But yeah, I feel like we all get into this iteration process of playing a deck and fine tuning it that kind of starts making us a little bit like a deck builder to some extent, but still there are some staples that you will put in a deck. And I feel like even if you're the best brewer, you're kind of always limited in terms of the number of cards that you have within, let's say, a format that is in the game. Like there are formats in card games like in Magic, once again as an example, which you have a ton of sets that have come out throughout the years, and you have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to building crazy stuff. While I think that in Gwent you're kind of limited when it comes to the number of cards that we have because our whole card pool is considered like a standard set. Okay, standard rotation. Flake is already kind of thinking about it. I
getting
know.
horny.
It's the buzzword, and there you're kind of limited when it comes to the deck building, and you will always choose cards which have been performing very very well within a given shell, and you will always build something off of that. You might be adding some different things in order just to spice it up, but or have this like important thing, which I feel is like cards which your opponent does not expect in a given deck. Because when you're going head to head against someone, you're able to kind of figure out, okay, he's probably going to play this. After that, he's going to do that, and this is the outcome, right? And you get surprised when your opponent comes up with something new or has a couple cards within his or her deck that kind of like counters you, but you have never thought of that. And you're like, wow, this is really smart. I haven't thought of that. Like, this is a cool addition to the deck. Like, I did not expect this. Maybe I should have played, this before and that after because I would not expect this to happen. And you kind of, you start thinking about it, and I feel like that also shows a player's creativity. You don't need to tell someone they're not creative because the majority of their deck is something that is performing well, because it is performing well, it is fine tuned. So why he or she should not be playing that? And if you want some spice and some personality to a deck, you can do your own stuff. It's like me jamming Pafko into most decks, although he sucks, but just to have Pafko. And when I'm streaming, I'm like, see, that's Pafko. He's cool. And he's like, oh my God. And I actually still get people coming in chat saying, like, oh my God, that card looks like you. I'm like, well, it does. There you go. They're
Who
like,
would have
how did
thought?
that happen? And they're like, I start explaining and stuff like that. So it's still cool. It has a nice story attached to it, right?
The other part of it is like what always makes me laugh is when there are complaints about like either at an open or a challenger or whatever, or just someone complaining about the top of the ladder. It's just the same 3 decks. Like everybody's playing the same stuff because it's the best. Though they're the best options. Like, are you really the what made me laugh the most was reading a complaint about someone saying that all the decks at one of the opens were very similar. I'm like, yeah, they're playing for a lot of money. They're going to bring what is best to the tournament. Like, well, someone could have at least tried to switch things up and been a little bit creative. No. Are you willing to like, are you willing to give up like 10 grand to be creative in front of people and just to please, one couch goblin who's watching the tournament or something? Like, no, I don't think that's the way it goes. Like, people will as the stakes get higher and as the difficulty gets ramped up, they are going to play what is best because you, like everyone else, wants to win. You're complaining about netdecking because you're playing against the same list frequently because they're efficient and you can't beat them. So you want people to be creative so you can beat up on creative decks. That's what you want to do. Let's be real here. So let's talk quickly a little bit about toxicity and what people like. I think maybe a little while ago, or I don't know how long ago, I asked people. I said, what do you consider a toxic deck? And I got like dozens of unique and different answers, which proved my point that toxicity is incredibly subjective when it comes to what someone thinks is toxic. Because a lot of people like, oh, mill is toxic. Okay, well, cloggers is toxic. Waylay spam is toxic. Traps are toxic. This card is toxic. This interaction is toxic. It's a buzzword. It's a crutch word. It's a lazy word that people want to say when they don't when they don't know how to properly explain why they don't like someone or something or someone or a card or whatever or an interaction. And in reality, it all boils down to the fact that they just don't like it because it beats them. That is like, well, like mill is toxic. I don't like playing against mill, but I win way more than I lose against mill, so I'm totally okay with it. Like, to me, toxicity is the mentality that you have this high and mighty thought of yourself that what you like is correct and what other people like is incorrect. That's toxic. That's the toxic mentality. It has nothing to do with decks because, like I said, when I asked, I got dozens of different replies, all of which were unique, all of which were like, well, Alzer's toxic. Maddock is toxic. Deathwish is toxic. This is toxic. Spam is toxic. Swarm is toxic. Ratclog is toxic. Everything's freaking toxic. Therefore, nothing is toxic. Like, let's just be real here.
I mean, someone has to be the villain always, right? I think in any card game or in any given meta, there is always a villain. Like,
but then you're dodging the blame, and the blame should be squarely on. Like, you're basically trying to find an outlet for you're trying to blame something for your own displeasure. Because if you go down to the root of the cause of what you think is toxic, you don't like it because it's either appearing frequently in your queues, or you can't beat it, or something along those lines. Like, what was toxic? What was toxic was the Silver Spy spam of like Skellige back in closed beta or whatever, or open beta.
Elf card also.
Yeah, that to me I feel is toxic because it was a clear abuse of an interaction that may have gotten past testing. And that to me was a toxic interaction because there was no way for your opponent to really do anything about it. You just basically, your opponent would get multiple card advantage and then there's nothing you can do. That to me is
Mm-hmm.
toxic. But decks that are beatable, decks that have lines of play that you can take to beat them, like rewind a bit. Is it toxic, or are you just not putting Irden in your deck because you think Irden is toxic? Like, Jesus Christ, like it's this gigantic circle
Or muzzle.
jerkulatory freaking activity of everybody thinking that if I lose, it's toxic. If I win, I'm the best. Like, you can't have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, some decks maybe are considered toxic by players because they make you feel a little bit helpless, and I feel like decks kind of like mill are because they pull stuff out of your deck and just mill it to oblivion. And it's never a fun feeling because you feel like you, in the given moment when this is happening to you, this is becoming not very fun and interactive. And I know that Gwent maybe is not the very like super interactive card game because we don't have counter magic. We don't have things that can happen within an instant. Like we don't have instants. Like we're limited to playing a card per turn within our turn. So that's kind of where the limitations come from. We're not able to say no to something when it's happening. So I feel like players do not like this feeling of helplessness, that kind of like, oh, he's milling something from my deck, which I need. It would be nice if I could take it from my graveyard or somewhere else and put it back in. But with Gwent, you can't because it's milled to oblivion, like it's exiled. It's you can't bring it back in any way, right? So you're limited here. There is mill, of course, in Magic, and mill in Magic is considered just like any other archetype. It's not considered as the main culprit villain. And if you look at like statistics, it's also not a deck that sees a lot of play and a lot of win rates. There are weird creations of decks. Like there's this one deck in Magic that I love. It's one of those decks that I kind of started playing Magic with, especially in the modern format. It's called 8-Rack. So it's a deck where you force your opponents to discard cards from their hand. You want to get them as close to 0 as possible. Your deck plays also a lot of removal. So whatever they manage to stick on the board, you kill and you get rid of. And you have these cards which inflict damage to their opponent based off of the number of cards that they have in their hand. So if they have 3 cards or less, for any card less than 3, they get 1, 2, or 3 damage, right? Or if you have 1 card or less, there is this card called Stricken Affliction that gives you 3 damage instantly. So it's like a bolt to your face every beginning of your turn, which you're not able to do anything about unless you get rid of these artifacts and enchantments. So these are decks which feel uninteractive, but when push kind of comes to shove, these decks are not very good because most of the high-end top tier decks are able to like run around them with the sheer power level that they have. And I think this is something that happens, but there are some decks that maybe people are playing that are not fine-tuned enough and are not 100%, and they are getting destroyed by these decks which are kind of a little bit maybe more niche, but they are still being played by others. And this kind of causes players to kind of feel like, oh, this isn't fun, this isn't interactive, I'm not able to do anything, this deck sucks, like we should go hate on it. And then they go and they hate on it. And I feel like in overall in Gwent, we're still pretty much safe when it comes to toxic decks, unless there are, of course, decks that overperform because it's a oversight on our side, so on the developer side or on the balance side, that we miss something that might be become a problem. Thankfully, we have a lot of cool people to test these things with and kind of find these weird and crazy unwanted interactions before they make it into the game. But I feel like, we are still kind of blessed when it comes to not having a lot of like really, really things that you would consider like super toxic. Like we had, of course, our toxic moments when it comes to the meta, but I think all of these were happening because of like our own mistakes more than what players are kind of coming up with. And I feel like Mill and Clog are the ones that have been recently the ones that, a lot of people were saying that they're toxic, but these are decks that you can easily play around. And if you look at any meta reports or anything like that, like, they're not top tier right now.
Like
they're not.
This is the one thing that I'm just like I always fall back on. It's like it's toxic because you're stubborn and you're not teching to beat it. If it's that prominent and it's that problematic, it's not unbeatable. It's not unbeatable at all. Isn't unbeatable. Like when Clog was, a problem, or and like Clog was always out there as a but ultimately it's just there are ways around it. There's reset cards for the Colgrims. There's there's row punish. There's all kinds of things. You know how I used to deal with Clog? I used to just run one incinerating trap, because I knew exactly when they're playing Colgrim, and I would just play the incinerating trap before it, and my opponent would just play Colgrim, and it would die to an incinerating trap, and it was hilarious. And that's basically it. But again, that is me understanding what the meta is like. And yeah, it might be quote unquote toxic, but you know what? The most toxic thing is the community response and their ultimate, or their first reaction of always trying to.
They are creating the toxicity.
Well, that's like, look, that's kind of the truth though, because like when I said that everybody gave me different answers of what they thought was toxic, like if we got rid of everything that was toxic, there would be nothing left. There would be nothing left, because of what would be left, then someone would call something else toxic. Like, just because you do not like something doesn't necessarily mean that it's toxic or problematic. It just means that you don't like it. Like, I don't like sushi. Is sushi toxic? No, I just don't like it. Like, that's just the way it goes. I mean, the problem with assigning quote unquote toxicity or something is toxic means that you're saying that it is an absolute boon on the game. It's a boon on the progress or the creative elements potentially. And there are decks that, like, when you say like, okay, this deck is toxic, like most decks that people think are toxic are quite unique in terms of what they can do. Something like Clog, nothing else can really do what Clog does. Nothing else can do what Mill does. Nothing else can do what a trap deck does. So you're saying it's toxic because it's not playing into that very narrow vision of how you want to play the game. Because from rank 25 to rank 15, you've been comfortable playing against the same nonsense and the same decks, and nothing forced you to think outside the box. But suddenly from rank 15 to 0, you're seeing a bunch of different stuff, and if there's something that you're not prepared for, and you're not ready to make a switch out of your deck because you're so stubborn in your own thought process, like, toxic decks are quite unique, and without them, what else are we going to see? It's going to be a game of just solitaire on one side or the other and whatnot. A lot of these, and like we mentioned last time, right? So I think that there needs to be a reevaluation of what people think are toxic, and when you say something is toxic, just kind of rewind and wonder why. Is it because it's beating you, or is it because you don't want to change up what's going on or whatnot? Like, I understand that there are cards that do things that you don't want them to do, but welcome to card games, mofo. Welcome to life in general, because life can be toxic too. When things just don't quite go your way, and you're like, you can't just automatically say that, the snowfall in the middle of the month of April is toxic. It's not. That's called climate. Well, I get it,
that's global warming.
but ultimately, you need to just pump your brakes in terms of what is quote unquote toxic, because not everyone agrees with you. Like, that's just the deal of it. Like, if there was a card that said, that was like 4 provisions, play on the board for 10 points, and your opponent, you can see all your opponent's hand. Yeah, that's a toxic card like that. Yeah. But Clog,
that is just bad design there.
Yeah, well, Clog isn't toxic. I don't think Mill is toxic.
Because you can play around it, right? You can play around it, but I feel like some things get branded toxic because they feature cards which we don't like. I hate to Cthulhu's card, like, for example. I don't like Colgrim. I don't like playing against Colgrim, but I know that in most matchups I'm still able to beat it unless they copy it, and then I'm not able to deal with like 2 copies because I didn't draw the removal that I need. Okay, then I'm screwed, right? But like it's you can't be always winning. It's like in life. Life will throw you a curveball and you will make mistakes and it will happen and you have to live with it. And the same is in card games. Like you will run into a matchup which you will not expect or you will not draw the cards that you need and then you're screwed and it's fine. And you move on and you play more games, you get better. You maybe think a little bit more before going against the same deck and you kind of learn that okay, like I learned very quickly playing against Mill that you need to 2-0 them if you're playing dwarves, for example, or if you're playing with elves, for example, with waylays, you can do it easily. So if you find your own strategy for playing against them, then I think you will be more than happy to face them multiple times, and you'll be like, this is not a problem. I can go against them, and I also feel like something that you mentioned, like decks on different ranks perform in a different way because people bring different stuff. I feel like I was more surprised playing on the lower ranks, A, by the misplays that people make, which is interesting. But you know that they're learning. B, from actually the creativity when it comes to the things that they're building. Because I'm currently rank 2 and trying to get to rank 1. And the majority of the decks that I face are pretty much the same. And they're very, very fine tuned. There's hardly ever a person that I see that is bringing something out of the ordinary or something which is not considered as being the best currently. And I feel like there is a lot of mill, which is interesting. And it's weird because whenever I play in like during working hours, not in the afternoon, the majority of the decks that I face are mill players, which I don't know why this is like I don't know, you wake up, you brush your teeth, you get breakfast, and then you're like, I'm gonna mill some people and to start off my day right, and you do it, and it's much easier than later in the day. I see more Skellige players, and Skellige is pretty good in this meta right now that we have. Self wound is crazy with the creeper Sigvald, and yeah, and I mean this is what you see, and you need to like anticipate that these decks will happen, these cards you will see, and you need to be able to play against them. Like if you hate Melusine, find a way to get rid of her. If you hate Sigvald, think a way to counter him. If you hate dwarves because they're slamming points everywhere, think of a counter for that. Like that's why people play things like Heatwave. That's why people play Irden. That's why people play Muzzle. That's why they, have these tech choices in order to when they face the deck that they hate, they be like, hey, I know you. I know what you're about to do. I'm going to save this card and it's going to win me around for sure.
Let's just define what 80% of toxicity complaints boil down to. It boils down to this: X card is toxic because I took a very greedy line of play and somebody had the foresight to play a card that counters my very greedy line of play, and given the fact that they did not let me win, it is toxic. That's it. That's it. Like Irden is what in terms of the amount of buzzwords in Gwent that people either overuse or don't understand. Toxic is overused. Binary is the other one that I don't think a lot of people just don't understand or overuse. Trying to think of some other ones, but was it carryover? I think is another one that some people don't quite get. Ultimately, anyway, at the end of the day, that's sort of my thought. Like if I were to boil it down a little bit to that Principal Skinner meme of like, am I out of touch? No, it is the children who are wrong. Like that whole meme, it's like, it's basically, am I too stubborn to change my deck and counter the meta? No, it is the meta that is toxic. Like, no, it's you just don't want to make the change. And I get it, but without that awareness and willingness to adapt and evolve and change with the ebb and flow of what a meta is, then you're going to be left behind. It's just the way it goes, and you're going to forever be stuck with whatever the hell wherever rank you are, and that's it. Because frankly, I don't hear the pros complain about toxicity. You know why? Because the pros go in there, they evaluate the meta, they make their deck, and they punish whatever the meta is.
They destroy.
Exactly. So that's it. Like your complaints are more so the fact that you do not want to change. And that's perfectly fine. If you want to be stubborn and set in your ways, no problem. But eventually, you might say, well, I was kicking the crap out of the meta yesterday. Yeah, the meta changes. Broken clock is right twice a day. That's kind of how it goes. So, frankly, look inward. Look inward.
The meta is a living entity and it will change. And you, as a player, should be adapting to it instead of the meta trying to force will it and adapt it to you. Like, that won't happen. Like, you can complain to us about decks and tell us, like, we should be doing something about them. But I feel like the first step that you should be making as a player is trying to actually work around these things that you find difficult for you. And it feels much better if you figure those things out yourself, or if you find tech choices within the deck that will help you get there. And I think it's kind of one of those good feelings in card games when you actually figure some stuff out and figure out what works for you. And when you go against Mill next time, you will be maybe better equipped to destroy them. And I wish you all luck. But yeah, first look at yourself, and then start pointing fingers elsewhere.
Nice. Not perhaps what everyone would have suspected when we were talking about this. It's like, all right, well, netdecking is super cool and fine, and Toxicity isn't as bad as everyone thinks it is. So,
end of episode credits.
Yeah, no problem. Well, we do have the Q&A, so hit us with the shop. Give us a little bit of that. Tell us to go to the shop. Lead us.
So we have merch. So if you missed the beginning of this and you're tuning in somewhere in the middle, I don't know why. And if you're still here after our jibber jabber about netdecking and toxic cards, I would like to remind you that 983shop.com has new merch. It is the Dagon Rumor Reporter merch. Anyone, you, your mom, your dad, I don't know, maybe even you can slip something on, cut it up, and slip it on your dog if you want. We do custom stuff for Geralt out of, but it would be bad to ruin such awesome, magnificent merch, especially the premium tee, which features the Dagon Rumor Reporter name tag on it, so you all can become Dagon Rumor Reporters. There is a hoodie. There is an awesome, beautiful mug for your coffee or tea or any other beverage of choice. And there is an awesome hoodie that will keep you warm. And all of these things are at 983shop.com. And most importantly, if you use the code Flurza5, you will get $5 off your order. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Do it. Cop that merch. Get it. Use the code. Me and Flake, we don't get anything from this, but we would enjoy to see you rocking this merch. So if you have any photos of yourself wearing this stuff, post it on Twitter, tag Gwentfinity, tag 983media, tag me and Flake. We'll have it on the episode. We'll talk about you rocking that stuff.
Oh yeah.
And we would like, if you support 983, which has been doing awesome stuff for the community, and I'm not only talking about Gwent, but also other card games and other things that they do. Totally support them because they deserve it. I get nothing out of this, but for me, it's just incredible to have merch that has the Dagon Rumor Report, which started as a meme and now is a thing. So thank you for tuning into this short TED Talk.
All right. Mailbag time, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back with your question.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Mailbag, or the Q&A, where we take your questions from Reddit and Twitter. And the first one is from Reddit by Not Meeple. Nice Geralt avatar there. There seems to be a fair amount of veteran players coming back into the game. What recent changes would you personally direct these players' attention to? An example, new mechanics, archetype support, draft mode.
That's a good question because, frankly, I don't know if it's a particular keyword or mechanic or something right now that I would lead them to look at more than some of the more intriguing cards that came out with the new drop. I think that one of the best selling points right now, if I were to say, look, you were part of the game, a year, 2 years, check out this new card drop and tell me that this isn't pretty damn cool, and tell me that like something like golden necker or whatever else, the ring, I forgot the name of the card, the ring that grows until you pass, like some of these fascinating cards that add extra layers of like not bluffing or whatnot, but like there's some really cool stuff. I would most likely show them this newest card set as saying this is some of the more unique card designs that we've seen in a long while. This should be enough to entice someone to at least pick up the game again and give it another go, especially if they're already very familiar with the rules. This adds so much extra flavor to what they're already familiar with. It's like finding a new topping for a pizza that you didn't know existed, right? Like it's like whoa, I could put M&Ms on a pizza. Like I don't do that, but you know what I mean. Like it's something along those lines. That's probably what I'd direct them to.
Yeah, fully agreed here. I don't want to toot our own horn, but since I don't work on balance, I will actually toot the designer's horn in this case. I don't know if that sounds appropriate. But yeah, cards like you mentioned, like Ring of Favor, cards like Golden Necker, the Mysterious Puzzle Box, stuff like that. These all are an Erendite, for example. Maybe not Traveling Priestess because she's maybe a little bit overtuned, in my opinion. But there are new additions to existing archetypes and existing decks in terms of the new cards that we added with Forgotten Treasures that I feel like are making the meta more interesting. A, B, they're enabling a lot of other decks that maybe fell out a little bit or maybe didn't see enough, maybe didn't have enough eyes on them. That's one thing. And I also feel like the recent changes that we've been doing to existing archetypes and existing cards and kind of changing their abilities and going back to the drawing board in order to make them better, aka, for example, Welcome Back Dwarves. These things in this direction in which the game has been going, I feel like is something that older veteran players will appreciate because I've seen a lot of comparisons to the place in which the game was before Homecoming is kind of being compared to where the game is right now. I don't want to say it's 1-to-1 because the game is different than what it used to be, but it has enough cool and exciting stuff and cards and archetypes where anyone can find something that will work for them and which that they will enjoy within the current meta. And I feel like the recent drop kind of solidified something that already has been happening, which is playing around with abilities, making the abilities a little bit more crazy. I mean, when people saw the ability on Golden Necker, they were like, okay, this is going to be interesting. Is this going to be like something that is going to be RNG heavy? While it turns out that you're pretty much, you're able to fish out from your deck stuff that you actually need. And then there are just cards that, that help you, maybe win the game, but have also this condition attached to it that you need to meet. And I feel like from playing the thing and actually executing these things, they're just fun. They're fun. They're interactive. They give you this possibility to actually think how you're gonna do your plays or like what you want to achieve in a given game plan that you have for a given game. And all these things kind of piled on top of each other just give a lot of fun. And I love seeing posts on Reddit recently like, hey, I'm a returning player after 4 years of not playing a game, or I dropped the game after Homecoming and now I'm back and I've seen that so much has changed. Like, what do you recommend I should be playing? And I see also like the community is being very open, is saying like, hey, check this out, welcome back, it's good to have you. If you're playing this, or if you're playing Scoia'tael, if you're playing Northern Realms, try this. And the community is kind of welcoming these players back, but I think they're coming back because they're seeing that the game is moving in a very good direction. So that's my answer to the question.
All right.
Yes.
Gwent Royalty, by the name of Devil Driven, has asked.
Love you, bud. You're awesome.
Very awesome. What keyword from another card game would you like to see in Gwent? This is a tough one because the rule set for Gwent is so much different. Like, there's not like I think Vlad mentioned menace. Menace being the keyword where blocking a creature with menace, you need 2 or more creatures to block a creature with menace. There's no blocking. There's no attacking.
Yeah.
Some of the similarities I can find is something like immunity and hexproof. Like those are kind of similar. Can't target something doesn't mean it can't be killed by AoEs or whatever. I was thinking that maybe not necessarily a keyword, but something that can be played at instant speed could be cool. If you think about it this way, if you could play a card at instant speed, but you lose your turn, like what if there was a card like a counterspell, like your opponent plays a card and you have the opportunity at instant speed to counter it or do something to it. Obviously, you're getting a card out of your hand, so you maybe just don't get your next turn. Like that could be fascinating. Obviously, again, given the fact that Gwent's rules are so different than every other card game, it's hard to really translate one keyword to another. But I think that is my answer: is that doing something at instant speed, being able to play something at your opponent's turn, probably my answer.
Damn it. That was my first thought. I would say something that on first my thought process went to, it would be really cool to have a type of counter magic within the game. Like we used to have this with one of the traps. You would play them, and if someone played a special card, it would flip and it would cancel the ability of that special. It was the trap with the snakes and stuff like that. I
Serpent trap.
Forgot the name.
Old school serpent trap. It was the
yes.
Yeah.
So we'll flip and it will cancel that ability. That was cool. That was like the first version of any type of like counter spellish thing in Gwent. But Gwent is, like you said, is such a different card game that it's very hard to find something from other card games that you would add to it. But I would also like a flash effect, like anything that can be happen at instant speed. Of course, you would need to do something in order to be able to do this. Like you can do this, but on the other hand, you will maybe like not, maybe not having your churn is not too good of a thing, but I think it would be fair and it would actually make sense if you're able to do something instantly. This would also kind of play into the fact that you are able to instant counter something before it lays eggs or is able to do anything. But I kind of feel that with Gwent being the way it is, that having something like, you would also need to introduce like how turns are played in terms of also adding additional triggers here, like an additional trigger where my opponent plays this and it has zeal. So before they can use the zeal ability, I am able to play something that will be able to destroy that card before the zeal effect, before they're able to trigger that, then it makes sense, right?
But those are like traps at that point. Like you'd have to.
Yeah, it kind of is like traps. Now I'm thinking about it more as like it's just like it's behaving like a trap. And then I was thinking like, what other things I enjoy is like I sorry to say, but I enjoy like revealing my cards from my opponent's hand and seeing what they have, what they're running with, and thinking how, getting information from that. I don't know if getting something and discarding something from my opponent's head would it be. I think in Gwent, the cards in your hand are too much of a resource in order for me to have the ability to look into them and discard them and, fool around with their game plan. I don't think that would be good. But maybe it would be fun to have at least. I mean, we used to have old school reveal when you were able to reveal stuff. And if you hit something, like I remember you had spotters back in the day, right? And if you revealed something, they would get boosted by the amount of the power of the card that you revealed on your opponent's side or something like that. So maybe that would be going back to these old school stuff would be fun. Although the more I think about them, I kind of feel like maybe they don't have a place in Gwent. So it's like a back and forth. And I also feel like a lot of mechanics that I normally enjoy would not, have place in Gwent in some way. Although I remember when we introduced Zeal for the first time, someone told me, "Hey, it's like haste," but I'm like, wait, it's not like haste. And haste in Magic means you're able to attack just when the creature goes on the board. It doesn't have summoning sickness. And they're like, yeah, you're simply when you play the card, you don't need to wait a turn for it to activate its order ability. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. But it's different because it always needs to be put, like, you need to put it into the Gwent perspective. So, but yeah, I think we'll both agree and stick to the instant speed stuff and flashers, something like that.
All right. Flamer Firong asking, as a custom card creator, I want my ideas more relevant to the actual game. That's oh, someone's a little entitled. So is it possible for CPR? I imagine they mean.
Yeah, whoa. What? What's CPR? CPR is not a company. We're CDPR. Like,
No, I think
if you're using the abbreviation, use it properly. Thank you.
I think what he's referring to is like the emergency trading, the cardiopulmonary resuscitation.
CPR, yeah.
But we'll give them the benefit.
They can hold a custom card contest.
Yeah, they also can, exactly. So is it possible for CDPR to hold a custom card contest and add top-notch cards into the game to the future?
No.
What's you could answer this.
No, because sorry to say, but
don't you have to like give them? Well, then you'd have to pay them for their intellectual property, and it's a whole thing, right?
I mean, you would need to join our balance team and bump off your ideas off of them before they even get introduced into the game. And the guys that work there, they have millions of their own ideas, and some of them don't make the cut to the game. So I feel like it's very hard for you, without fully knowing the design philosophy that our team has behind the game, to actually come up with something that would one-to-one be introduced and translated into the game. And I also feel like if we would be taking ideas from the community and trying to add them to the game would very quickly become like a spam fiesta or like a crazy show, and we wouldn't want that to go that way. I think we have a balanced team for a reason, and that team has been also growing throughout the years also for a reason. And I feel like they've been doing a really, really solid job. And I think someone coming in from outside, then their ideas would not necessarily work in what we're currently doing.
I think what they're asking more so is that, like, what if there was like a one-time contest where people submitted a single card, not necessarily to be like, I'm on the design team, but like, put it like, here's the other thing is that our, like, the subreddit custom Gwent is a thing. Nobody cares. Everybody just spams countless custom cards on the main Gwent channel. And it's like, it's just flooded with stuff. It's just constant flooding of stuff. The other, I remember the other term that I wanted to say that everybody overuses, and that's the term rework and balance. I'm all for a custom card contest. I think that would be kind of cool. But to me, I think that I always thought that the major hurdles in this was being able to acquire someone's intellectual property and compensating them correctly for their card. But the other thing about like the massive amount of custom cards is that what if there's so many custom cards out there? Like, I would imagine that I would like the people who are designing cards right now, like for CDPR, like I wouldn't be surprised if they completely ignore all the custom cards that are out there, because think about it this way: what if a card comes out and it's influenced or is directly the same as one of the custom cards that they see? That becomes an entire shit show, as you said, in itself. And I remember this because a long time ago, I wanted to be a comic book writer. And I mean, I still do. It would be amazing. But I wrote some stories and some outlines, and I wanted to run them by somebody who was already a published comic book writer, somebody who I knew. And I wanted to run an idea by them, and they said, no, I don't want to hear it. And I asked why, and they said, because if it's good, I'm going to steal it. I said, oh, just blatantly, you're just going to steal my idea? He's like, yeah, whether consciously or subconsciously, if the idea is good, I'm going to steal it. I said, oh, okay. Like, and I would imagine that, but that becomes a problem, because if they do steal it, and I do sue, and I do have
property,
exactly, that becomes a whole problem. And I kind of understood where he was coming from. Now, the method in which he addressed it was very abrasive and jerkish, and I don't talk to this person anymore. But ultimately, I can see why part of the development team doesn't read this stuff, because what if they are influenced, and what if they do take an idea and it becomes like you mentioned, like a litigation shit
Staple.
show. But ultimately, a contest of one person submitting cards, and you say, okay, this is the winning card. We're going to introduce this card to the game, and congratulations, blah blah blah. I'm like, I suppose it can be a good thing, but like there are more problems associated with it.
Yeah. There's more
And
problems than benefits.
here's the thing: if all the custom card creators started posting on custom Gwent instead of Gwent subreddit, that's a good start. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I just say these things.
Go there. Like
I
to
always
be
applaud
honest,
creativity.
I don't think like the majority of them actually go through these ideas. Like they might check them out and they might see if something like this applies. But I also have seen that some of the ideas that kind of are posted, we've already tried those things and we've kind of looked into these things and they hardly ever work out. So that's why we keep the design to the designers, not to the community, and I think we do it for a reason. And I think we're not the only card game that does that. Like, I mean, there's a lot of custom cards, but I would keep the design to the designers and cut it there.
Yeah, but it's like there's also a lot of like, legal ramifications if somebody were
Yeah.
to. Look, I adore creativity, and I adore people, coming up with great ideas and whatnot. I think that's always fascinating. It's awesome, but like the fact that there's like this there might be this, I don't want to call it this feeling of entitlement, but just because you're creating cards doesn't mean that CDPR has to pay attention and put them in a game.
Yeah.
Like I don't like that's so.
Also, if we go this route,
Like,
I mean, we
well,
borrow like any card game borrows ideas off of different card games. So it's like there's no I don't know who invented the wheel first in this case. Is like it doesn't matter if you drive a Toyota, you drive a Honda or a Mazda or whatever. Like someone invented the wheel first, and then but the cars are different, right? But they
yeah,
all have wheels, so.
I
Well,
get, yeah,
let's not get philosophical here. But some of the things that you see in card games, they come from somewhere else, and they're an inspiration. And I feel like the people that also design cards, they pull inspiration from other card games that they enjoy throughout their life or they're currently playing, or there are some mechanics that they just come out of the blue and introduce to the game. I think also something to highlight, which I will always highlight, and something that you always also kind of highlight, is that Gwent is different than any card game. So also the abilities and stuff that we introduce here are a little bit different, but there are some similarities to other card games. So, but yeah, like intellectual property here in the sense that if someone comes up with something and we take that card one to one without changing anything on it, well, that wouldn't be cool, and it has legal ramifications here.
yeah. What I worry about is that people treat Reddit and their custom cards like Reddit is like American Idol, where they're all trying to audition, and like there's like they're like, well, why aren't you picking a winner? Well, because
Because we ain't looking at your
it was
stuff.
exactly because it was never a contest. Like that's the thing. Like
You guys made the contest, we did it.
yeah, like it's like that. Remember that question about the dude who's talking about the Northern Realms Yennefer blue balls? It's like, why are you blue balling us? Like, mofo, you're blue balling yourself. Like
Yourself, yeah.
Look, I think that custom cards are cool, but I also foresee significant issues with CDPR taking custom cards out of people's hands and adding them to games, and I don't think that, it is what it is.
Let's move on.
All right, here's a very important question.
This is from Static Panic. So thank you for this question because it's freaking amazing. Could Luke Skywalker defeat Geralt of Rivia in combat? And what about in a game of Gwent?
Okay, very simple. Very, very simple. We have a bunch of questions to go through, so I'm going to be quick. Yes, yeah. Luke Skywalker will absolutely decimate and crush Geralt. It's not even a contest. And he would also beat him in a game of Gwent. It's called the Jedi Mind Trick. Now, again, yes. I think that if Luke Skywalker knew the rules of Gwent, he could easily influence and Jedi Mind Trick and all that other stuff to Geralt. Geralt is a human. Humans are susceptible to Jedi Mind Tricks. Geralt is not.
He's not human 100%. Like you need to take into account the trial of
Jedi
grasses
mind
that he
tricks.
is.
Jedi mind tricks work
Yeah,
on
yeah.
many different species. Maybe
Question is
not.
if it would work on him, or maybe if they were smart enough
Okay.
to create a decoction or something
All right.
that they
If
would
he's
make him
immune to it,
immune to it.
then yeah, Geralt will crush him in Gwent.
I don't
But
know. I don't know, to be honest, because I feel like with Star Wars and with the Jedi Masters, or they with every iteration of every movie, TV show, whatever, they just become freaking stronger, and you can tell like the Force has no boundaries when it comes to stuff. Like basically, back in the time in Dagobah, they could barely get an X-wing out of the freaking swamp, and now they can stop a whole freaking big ass, I don't know, destroyer, whatever, just with one hand. So I mean, I feel like their power is becoming
the Force is
like
limitless.
boundless because the Force is everything,
That's
right?
it.
It's everywhere.
It's how you give yourself to the Force and become one with the Force, and that's
Yeah.
that's basically how it goes. But I mean, in combat,
And Geralt is has his own problems. Like if he drinks too many potions, he gets his toxicity level up too much.
he
He's
starts
still kind of
playing
human.
Mill.
He's still kind of, yeah, he gets milled. I mean, he has his limitations, and I feel like Jedi do not have these limitations, because if they become one with the Force, the Force and it's the amount of power that is there that you can tap into is just, it's infinite, right? And that's kind of what the Sith enjoy the most, that they can have infinite power through different means, but the power, it is actually infinite. And Geralt's, I think, is has some cutoff point on which, of course, he can do incredible things, but I don't think he's that
Look,
powerful to defeat Luke Skywalker.
Luke Skywalker is probably one of the most powerful Jedi ever to have existed. His lightsaber would cut through absolutely anything that Geralt
Yeah.
would throw at him. The only thing that
I was thinking about signs, but he could
whatever, like you could
force stop him.
of course there's like force absorption where you just
Yeah.
essentially transfer the energy and whatnot. Like, let's be real. All right, you want to read the next one?
Yeah. Which keywords? This is from Zayad Neo from Reddit. Which keywords do you feel should exist more in the game, whether through reworks or new card drops?
Well, you can take the word rework and throw it out the airlock, because that term is overused and is terrible.
We're doing a lot of reworks for cards, right?
You're doing slight reworks, and that's fine, but everybody wants to rework everything all the time, and it's
that's
a little
true.
How about new cards? I mean, how about some new cards? Like, those are always nice to have. Which keywords would I wish would come back a little bit more? I would like to see another card have a rupture ability. I don't know to what degree, but I think rupture is it's around for one card, and I would love to see another card get rupture.
I want more poison. Easy. I just want more cards with poison abilities.
Yeah.
Or maybe doing something where, I don't know, if a unit has poison, something happens, and kind of like build it more into it. I feel like it's not an archetype by itself right now, but it's more of a means of removing something that you feel that is problematic. So poison once, poison twice, and it's gone, right? So something more around this would be really, really cool, and I would like something to happen with that. And I'm just coming here with this idea from the top of my head in terms of like what I would like to see. This is not based off of any internal knowledge. Thank you.
This one coming from Aditya Mulia off Twitter, asking, when you do your recording it for an episode, do you do it in one take? One take, baby. You might see some cuts.
Always.
One take, but we just go straight start to finish, baby. We don't there's no Our script is essentially the questions that we pull off of the various platforms, and then we just basically write out, okay, what episode is it? 13, perfect. I write out the Dagon rumor report. We write out the topic, and then the rest is just ad-lib. I don't want to say ad-lib, but I mean, like, we just talk. It's all one take. I mean, we're not here to put on a production. We're here to have a frank and casual discussion, right? We're trying to be as candid as possible.
Plus, we just like to take one break before the Q&A just to refill water and stuff like that. So
That's right.
that's more behind the scenes.
One take Flake.
One take, always.
Yep, they call me One Take Flake. All right, next up, I think you can. Well, the next question is like a two-parter, and I think the
Yeah.
first part is regarding like technical stability of the app, which we have no say or influence over.
When
I
it
don't
comes
think.
to iOS and Android app, because I've seen this come up more and more frequently, what I can tell you is we're looking into this and we're collecting data. So if you have any crash reports or anything like that, like let us write to our support page. We're collecting players that have been having problems on iOS and Android. I think Android is actually, there are more crashes there. And so any more info and data we can get is good for us because we're trying to fix these things. So we're looking into them. So it's not like we're avoiding the topic. We're working on it, but we don't have an update. So
All right.
yeah.
All right, we got to run through these real quick because we're already like way over limit here. But all right. So the second part of the question is, my second part is regarding draft and alternate game modes like seasonal. They seem to be low priority, but I think their lack of popularity is due to lack of attention, which feeds back into itself. And it goes on, but it's mostly about the same here. It talks about like other games put a lot of focus on things like their alternative game modes, like Hearthstone with battlegrounds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so I guess that, the question is like, is this going to be a focus and is it going to be improved? Are there going to be added stuff? I think that alternative game modes. I mean, I re-downloaded when I was at my parents. I re-downloaded Hearthstone to play battlegrounds again. I'd been playing a bunch of Storybook Brawl and I'm trying to try something, go back to battlegrounds and alternative game modes. They even tried their mercenary mode. I will say this, Gwent alternative, I have no interest in playing seasonal and I have no interest in playing the current draft mode because it's not good enough, in my opinion.
I kind of have to second what you just said. With draft mode, I feel bad because I feel like it's a mode that has a lot of potential, but I agree that maybe we do not have enough capacity or priority, or the prioritization on these things is not where it should be. But it's very hard to shift focus from multiplayer, which has always been our priority, and move it over more into draft. So whenever I feel like we have more of a breather, we go back to draft and we try to assess the problems that are there and do it. With seasonal, I feel like the modes are cool, but there would be better to have a little bit more variety. But I know we're also looking into upping the variety there, so there's some more cool things to do. Because I feel like some players just enjoy seasonal and they just play seasonal because it's fun that they get to come up with some quirky decks for it and use them. And if you're a deck builder and if you're a person that likes variety, you will go for that. But when it comes to my own experience outside of Gwent, for example, when I look at Magic, I don't find interest in game modes like standard. Like I will maybe play it on Arena when I have like some free time if I'm not playing anything else that I'm super interested in. So I will do it. But my go-to is like Modern, which I feel like is the healthiest and has the coolest meta, or Pauper, which is more accessible and you to dish out crazy amounts of money on cards, and you can play with only with commons. So yeah, those are the ones that I'm kind of incentivized to play around with. Commander is also really cool, but it's always hard to find like some peeps to play that. But there are other game modes which I'm just not interested in because I feel like they're not the thing for me. And I'm not also a big fan of draft and MTG, for example. I will play with some friends in the studio if we have like a box to crack open and do it and draft. But other than that, it's not my bag of things and not my bag of tricks. And I feel like it's fine. Like everybody likes different stuff. But yeah, coming back to it, I feel like for draft and Gwent, I feel like it would actually be able to stand on its own 2 feet, but it just needs a little bit more love still.
I think
And we will give it a little bit more love.
there should be formats like, I don't know, standard format, wild format, commoner format, like Pauper.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine if standard rotation would open up new formats.
We once did an internal tournament in the CDPR studio for Gwent where you were only able to play with common cards. It was super fun. It was one of the funnest tournaments that I ever played in. I think I got second place, and then someone beat me to
Attaboy.
first place. It was
Wolfpack
really fun.
MVP.
Yep.
All right, last one. Hit me.
Have neutral leaders ever been considered? Something like you can use only neutral cards, but leader grants more provisions to play around with. Why is there no random cosmetic option? Okay, so that's premium tokens, and yeah, it's same thing. So yeah, this is by Giafrid on Reddit.
So I actually thought that, you know how like whenever we're talking about new leaders, we always say,
Yeah.
well, you got to jam in 6, right? So it's not just
Yeah.
about having one good idea. You need 6 good ideas, one for each faction. Neutral leaders is something that actually bounced around in my head a little bit. Like when
That's Journey.
well, like the way I was thinking about it is not leaders from a cosmetic standpoint, but leaders from a playability standpoint where you can only play neutral cards. However, you're getting your leader ability is essentially making up for what you're lacking from faction synergies. So think about it this way, you know, instead of having, let's say, a leader that can jam in 15 to 16 extra provisions, it's up to like 20 or something like that. And the leader ability is something relatively very basic or not too OP, or the other way, where you're getting your 15 provisions, but the leader ability is incredibly powerful to, you know, essentially make up for that. I think that that is a way to add extra leaders. The problem, again, is you need to balance this leader, not just against or no, because it's only playing neutral cards. So I think that this is definitely a viable option. I think that this is perfectly fine. I think that you could probably print like 2 or 3 neutral leaders that only play neutral cards. It could be fascinating to see how
we
this
would need more neutrals to make it
well,
fun. But isn't it that like introducing a 7th faction into the game though?
It would without the pitfalls of having to flesh out an entire faction synergy and identity because you're just playing neutral cards. So
yeah, I'm just afraid that this will naturally create a 7th faction, and if it's good, people will be more like, you know, looking towards that instead of like focusing on the other factions. But maybe I'm wrong.
Well,
but it's an interesting idea, to be honest. Like now that you mentioned it, I feel like it's quite interesting.
The thing about it is that neutral cards don't typically synergize together, right? It's very rare that you'll have like, it's not like all your elves or all your dwarves or all your assimilate are gonna play off of each other. If it's just neutral stuff, it's not like one is gonna necessarily trigger on cards 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, you're gonna have to rely on that leader ability to carry a lot of the weight of how it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be a viable thing. I just think
it'll be fun.
I think that it is probably the most viable opportunity of adding a new leader without having to add 6. I think that's the only way to do it. And random cosmetic options. I actually think that this is I've been wondering about this too. It's like where, you know what, you're like, it's same thing with card backs. It's like, why not have every game I log into a different card back, you know, is an option. Same thing with leader skins. Like, all right, like what you're queuing up as monster and you hit what you want your leader to be, and it's random. And every time you queue in, it's like, all right, this time it's going to be Arrakis Queen with these different cosmetics. You know, this time it's going to be Geralt with his bunny ears and a pan and some other stuff, and next time it's going to be whatever. I think that that's perfectly fine.
That would be fun. That would be fun.
And like, I think I agree with Gifford here in terms of that being a cool thing. But these are all, like you mentioned, low priority. I hate that it always has to potentially fall down that rabbit hole of things won't get done because they're low priority. But you know, so where does the random thing fall on your tier list of things that need to get done? Right?
Not super high. Like if you think about, like, I feel like these would be things that we could add on top if we had a little bit more time, which I think time is not, it's not a resource that we have infinite amounts of. So I feel like the manpower that is and the focus that we have is going to different things. So if we ever had like although I feel like I'm thinking about it like right now, if we even had more time and we're not focusing on balance is such a thing that you will always be to working on. But there are other things, like for when it comes to like these random cosmetic generator, in this case would be something that would be on the live up side, but they're focusing on bringing back journeys right now. and adding a little bit more cool stuff to it and kind of new stuff to unlock in those. So, and we also have Project Golden Necker that we're working on. So there's a lot of things that are happening right now. So these things are not high priority. Maybe when we get those things out of the way, maybe there'll be more capacity for this. So I've heard about this numerous times. So maybe it's something that will make it into Gwent. But if not, I'll keep that on my internal list of things to kind of pass on to
Yeah, I like
to the
both those ideas
designers.
though. I definitely like both those ideas.
Yeah,
All right.
agreed.
There you go. Close the mailbag. It's all done. It's all done.
This was a
Pavel?
long one.
Yeah, it was a
A
long one.
good
I want
one.
to put in as many questions as possible. Maybe we went a little bit overboard, but
Yeah,
it's
I'm
okay.
super thankful for the amount of questions that we get on a weekly basis. I feel like you guys are always delivering, so thank you for them. Keep on coming, because sometimes if they don't make it, like, feel free to post it again, unless it's about premium tokens, Dagon, balance related stuff, and reworks and stuff like that. We won't touch upon any of those things. But yeah, if you have any questions that we might have missed and they're important to you, keep on dropping them. We'll get to them, and yeah,
All
we'll
right.
answer them for sure.
And don't forget, go to 983shop.com, get yourself a Dagon Rumor Reporter shirt, and then show us the
Exactly,
pictures.
and use the code Flurza5.
Yeah, and the best
Get
part about
$5
that,
off.
best part about it is that that is a shirt that if you showed up to like a wedding wearing it, people would be like that's the best dressed guy at this whole event.
Yeah.
So even the groom would be like, how the hell did you? Why?
Plus, you'll get questions. What's this Dagon thing?
Yeah.
Are you a reporter? Really?
Right.
Yeah.
Like easy way to just sort of, I'm going to end the show as I do every week. I love you, man.
Love you too, bud. Always awesome to do this. I hope you feel better soon.
Yeah.
And yeah, always remember that you're not losing if you're learning, right?
That's the one. You got it. Perfect. We will
Yes.
see you next time on the
Been
Flurza
practicing
Experience.
on dog walks with Geralt.
Oh, just telling him? Yeah. You're not losing if you're learning.
learning.
Dog's
like,
just looking at you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, stop yelling. I'm going to poo now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on the Flurza
Exactly.
Experience. Bye.
Bye.